Something of a crisis occurred in the art world last year when Walter Lander, the wealthy American collector, announced to the world at large that he had procured the Bacchus of Benedetto Trovato. Trovato, until a few years ago unknown in art circles, has recently emerged as one of the great overlooked painters. Of the Venetian school and thought to be a disciple of Titian himself, his canvases, of which there are very few, fetch high prices. Mr. Lander paid £20,000 for the Bacchus. However, the purchase was followed by an immediate disclaimer. Antonio Sforza, secretary to the aged Duke de Severin, announced that the Bacchus had long hung in his master's private collection in Provence. Therefore, Walter Lander had been deceived. Mr. Lander then revealed that he had not bought the painting through an accredited dealer, but privately from an obscure British painter of his acquaintance, Alice Starkey. Miss Starkey, a landscape artist and occasional portrait painter, maintained publicly that she had sold the canvas in good faith, believing it indeed to be a Bacchus of Benedetto Trovato. Today, however, in the Crown Court, Alice Starkey answers charges of obtaining property by deception contrary to Section 15 of the Theft Act, 1968. Mr. Charles Lotterby prosecutes, Miss Helen Tate appears for the defence, and Judge Bragg presides.
Now, Mr. Lander, do you recognize this painting?
Yes, that is the one which Alice Starkey represented to me as being the Bacchus by Benedetto Trovato.
I therefore introduce this painting in evidence. It should be marked Exhibit 1. Now, Mr. Lander, for this painting you paid Miss Starkey the sum of £20,000.
I did.
How did you pay the money over? By cheque, bank draft?
By check to cash.
Isn't that a little unusual?
Well, when you're buying paintings, you have to go along with what the vendor wants. It isn't like buying real estate or something across the counter in a store. It's a question of faith more than anything else, and the parties involved and the quality of their goods.
Are you saying that Miss Starkey asked you to make the cheque payable to cash?
Yes.
You find in transactions of this sort, people don't always want there to be a record of the sale?
Your Honour?
Yes. Mr. Lotterby, that is both a leading question and a matter of comment.
Obliged, Your Honour. Now, Mr. Lander, can you tell us in more detail how it was you came to purchase this painting from Miss Starkey?
Well, I was in England to buy some paintings, if I could, and one day in March, I heard about an old mansion in Rustingford, the contents of which were up for auction. I went down to see what the gallery contained, and there, by chance, I met Miss Starkey, who was also looking around. There was nothing of real interest in the sale, but once Miss Starkey learned who I was and what I was after, she told me that if I was prepared to keep quiet about it, she could perhaps put me in the way of a genuine art treasure.
If you were prepared to keep quiet about it?
Yes.
And those were her exact words?
They were.
Thank you. Continue.
Well, I didn't know what to make of it at first. There are a lot of tricksters around the edges of the art business. You have to be careful. But I made sure that Miss Starkey really was a painter herself, as she said she was, and I went around to her studio the next day at around 5. And there she produced that painting there. It was really quite remarkable. It carried the signature Benedetto Trovato, and it certainly looked of its period. It seemed a genuine find, and certainly a bargain.
For £20,000, you regard a Trovato painting as a bargain?
Oh, yes. 22 or 23,000 wouldn't be an unreasonable figure in investment terms today. You see, Trovato's value keeps escalating. His John the Baptist went for 31.5 in New York last year.
Indeed. Incidentally, did Miss Starkey tell you how she came to be in possession of this painting?
I was very careful to inquire, sir. She told me that she'd recently returned from a painting tour of Italy, and while she was in Venice, she bought up a job lot of old canvases to reuse, and among them she found the Bacchus.
And she then offered you for £20,000 this painting we see here today as the Bacchus of Benedetto Trovato.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Lander.
Mr. Lander, you have just said that Miss Starkey offered you the painting we see here today as the Bacchus of Benedetto Trovato.
Yes, I have.
As the Bacchus or as a Bacchus, Mr. Lander?
I beg your pardon?
Well, there is a distinction, you see. I want you to cast your mind back to that day in Miss Starkey's studio. Now, when she offered you the painting, did she say, "Here is the Bacchus by Benedetto Trovato," or merely, "I'm offering you a Bacchus by Benedetto Trovato"?
As I recall, the latter.
A Bacchus, implying then that there might well be others.
I'm sorry.
You see, I want to make it quite clear that Miss Starkey's case is that she believed this to be a Bacchus by Trovato, and did not suggest to you that it was the only Bacchus. Now, you stated that at Rustingford my client told you that she could put you in the way of a genuine work of art, provided you were prepared to keep quiet about it.
Yes.
Seems you didn't keep quiet, Mr. Lander.
Well, no. Why on earth should I? It was a crazy condition. I didn't take it seriously for a minute. If a man comes across a previously undiscovered work of art, he wants to let everybody know about it. That's what collecting means.
Well, did Miss Starkey give you any idea why she wanted you to keep quiet, perhaps?
No.
Did she not explain why she wanted the £20,000 in cash rather than by cross-check?
No, not at all.
Oh, come, Mr. Lander. Didn't Miss Starkey make some remarks about British tax?
Oh, tax. I didn't take that seriously.
Let me assure you, Mr. Lander, that in the British Isles, everything to do with tax is taken seriously.
She did say something about capital gains tax.
So you received the impression, did you not, that Miss Starkey wanted a private sale and a check to cash in order to avoid a tax bill?
She said that she needed all the money in order to continue painting. She even told me that she'd been waiting for somebody like me to come along in order to sell the Trovato in the way she needed, without publicity or fuss. She was certainly waiting for somebody like me to come along.
Thank you, Mr. Lander.
You may stand down, Mr. Lander.
Your Honour, my next witness is Quentin Brooke, the eminent art critic. But first of all, there is a procedural matter. I shall wish to introduce a second exhibit at this point, but a question of identification will arise, which can only be resolved by a witness I mean to call a little later, Signor Antonio Sforza.
1 minute, Mr. Lotterby. Signor Sforza, yes, Secretary to the Duke of Severin. Is the gentleman present?
He is, Your Honour.
Then I take it you're asking if you may call him to make the identification now and hear the rest of his evidence later.
That is so, Your Honour.
Couldn't take all his evidence at this point?
Well, there is other evidence that really ought to be heard first.
Has the defence any objection to this?
None whatever, Your Honour.
Then you may proceed, Mr. Lotterby.
Call Antonio Sforza.
Antonio Sforza, please.
What religion are you, please?
Roman Catholic.
Take the Bible in your right hand and read the words written on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You are Antonio Sforza?
Yes, I am.
And you are employed as Secretary to His Excellency the Duc de Severin, having special responsibility for his estates and possessions in Chateau Grandy, Provence.
That is so.
And that is where you live?
Yes.
Now, Signor Sforza, counsel for the prosecution has called you at this point simply to make an identification for him. We will clear that up, and then I shall ask you to wait outside again and hear the rest of your evidence later.
Yes, madam.
I introduce this painting in evidence as Exhibit 2. Now, Signor Sforza, can you identify this painting for us, please?
I think perhaps I can. May I examine it a little more closely?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Yes. That is a painting known as the Bacchus of Benedetto Trovato, which for the last 7 years has hung in the private collection of His Excellency le Duc de Severin.
Did you yourself supervise the transportation of this painting to England some 3 days ago?
Yes, I did.
Thank you, sir.
I have nothing to ask the witness for the time being, Your Honour.
Then I will ask you to leave the courtroom again for the time being, Signor Sforza. Remember that you are now under oath. You must not discuss the case with anybody.
I now call Quentin Brooke.
Quentin Brooke, please.
I'll affirm, if you don't mind. I do solemnly, sincerely, and truly declare and affirm that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Your name is Quentin Brooke, and you live at the Beeches, Cummelford Lane, Maidenhead.
That is correct.
I'm sure my friend won't mind if I lead on this. You are a writer on art, broadcaster, critic of the Review Fraternity, and author of a book entitled Titian and the Venetians.
I am.
Mr. Brooke, you are regarded as something of an authority on Venetian painting of the 16th century.
Well, I published a monograph on the subject, as you pointed out. I suppose my views are reasonably well respected.
Are you acquainted with the works of Benedetto Trovato?
I've taken a particular interest in him since 1965, when he was established as a personality of the Venetian school. Trovato was a disciple of Titian, possibly his greatest.
Can you tell us if either of these works, marked 1 and 2, is, in your view, by Benedetto Trovato?
Yes, this is the Trovato, exhibit number 2. It is the Bacchus from the private collection of the Duke de Severin.
And the other painting, Mr. Brooke?
Oh, well, I'm not sure. By an unskillful hand, I'd say it was a cheap and common imitation.